Hey everyone, I am so glad you're joining me for this explainer. Today, we're going to pop the hood and decode the very foundation of how our money actually works over time. You know, we interact with money literally every single day of our lives, yet so few of us pause to really look at the invisible forces acting on our bank accounts. So, our goal today is super simple. We're going to break down these complex economic mechanics into clear, bite-sized steps so you can walk away with a profound understanding of what is actually happening to your wealth. Let's just dive right into it.
Okay, picture this for a second. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, walking down to your local cafe and finding out that your usual cup of coffee costs exactly twice as much as it did yesterday. Then you realize, wait, it's not just the coffee. Your groceries, your gas, your rent, everything is double the price. But your salary, it stayed exactly the same. Ask yourself, would you feel richer? Well, of course not. You'd feel totally ripped off, even though your actual paycheck hasn't lost a single digit. This little thought experiment highlights a huge hidden danger lurking in our economy, and it's something we really need to unpack. All right, Section 1, meet the silent thief.
So what is this economic force? Well, it is quite literally a thief that picks your pocket without you ever even noticing. We call it inflation. It's the process where, over time, prices rise while the value of your money falls, which leads to a massive loss in purchasing power. Let me give you an analogy. Let's say you have a crisp new $100 bill today. You hide it in a secure drawer, lock it up, and completely forget about it for 10 years. 10 years later, you open that drawer, and yep, you still have exactly $100. The number on the bill hasn't changed at all. But here is the critical problem. What that money can actually buy has changed completely. Maybe 10 years ago, that $100 could buy a full week's worth of groceries for your family. Today, it might only buy food for what, 3 or 4 days? Your money didn't physically vanish, but its purchasing power absolutely did. And that, in a nutshell, is inflation.
And we see this all the time, right? Just think about everyday items. Coffee, rent, fuel, eating out, grabbing movie tickets. Have you noticed how a standard movie ticket just slowly creeps up in price over the years? Or how just going out for a normal restaurant meal suddenly feels like this big luxury? It's not that the coffee beans or the movie theaters are suddenly becoming way more valuable. It's actually because each unit of your money, each individual dollar, is just buying a little bit less than it did before. The actual value of your currency is shrinking.
Moving right along to Section 2. Why do prices rise?
We know what inflation feels like, but why exactly are prices going up in the first place? Well, there are 3 main culprits here. First up, demand. This one is pretty straightforward. When a ton of people want to buy the exact same thing, but there's a limited supply, businesses are absolutely going to raise their prices. Second, we've got rising production costs. Think about what it takes for a company to just keep the lights on. If they suddenly have to pay way more for electricity, or transportation, or raw materials, they aren't just going to eat those losses. They usually pass those rising costs straight on to you, the consumer. And third, the money supply. This is where governments and central banks come into play. When way more money enters the economy than the actual amount of goods being produced, all that excess cash is basically chasing the same amount of stuff. And when that happens, prices naturally go up.
Now, you might be wondering, wait a minute. If inflation is just making everything more expensive and eating away at our purchasing power, why don't governments just ban it? Wouldn't a world with absolutely zero inflation be perfect?
Which brings us to Section 3, the 2% target. The answer to that question reveals a really surprising twist about how our modern economies actually work. 0% inflation, it's actually not the goal at all. Central banks actively aim for a very specific magic number, 2%. But why? Well, because a really small, predictable amount of inflation acts as a kind of engine for the whole economy. It encourages people to spend and invest their money today rather than just hoarding it in a mattress, because they know things are going to be slightly more expensive tomorrow. And all that spending, it gives businesses the confidence to grow, build new factories, and hire more workers. That tiny bit of pressure keeps the whole economic machine running smoothly.
But Section 4, when inflation destroys economies.
What happens when that 2% target goes totally off the rails? When the silent thief basically goes rogue? It is catastrophic. The absolute worst-case scenario happened in Germany back in the early 1920s. Prices were spiraling so wildly and so fast that paper money became almost completely useless. The purchasing power plummeted to the point where ordinary people literally needed wheelbarrows full of cash just to go to the market and buy a simple loaf of bread. Just imagine that for a second, taking your entire life savings in a wheelbarrow just for some basic food.
And look, we can't just brush this off as ancient history. We've seen this happen recently in places like Zimbabwe and Venezuela, where runaway inflation completely devastated everyday life and wiped out generational wealth overnight. These extreme examples are exactly why keeping a super tight leash on inflation is arguably the single most important job a central bank has. It is for sure the glue holding our economic stability together.
All right, on to section 5, cash versus investing.
So now that we totally get the mechanics, the drivers, and the real dangers here, how do you actually defend your wealth? Let's look at a quick comparison between two people, Sarah and James. Sarah takes $10,000 in cash, locks it in a safe, and leaves it totally untouched for 20 years. If inflation averages just 3% a year over that time, Sarah's money is going to lose a massive amount of its purchasing power. She'll be able to buy way less with that same 10 grand. James, on the other hand, takes his $10,000 and puts it into diversified investments that grow over time. James is living in the exact same economy as Sarah. He's dealing with that same 3% inflation, but because his money is invested, it actually has a chance to grow faster than the rate of inflation over the long haul.
Now, does this mean you should completely abandon cash? No, absolutely not. Cash is incredibly useful for emergencies, but it's just not always the best tool for building long-term wealth. Everyone needs an emergency fund for, a surprise medical bill or a blown tire. The real secret to financial literacy is just understanding the difference between the money you need right now, today, and the money you are trying to grow for your future.
Let's wrap things up with Section 6, how to protect yourself.
We know the silent thief is out there, so what is our game plan? Here is a super clear, practical 3-step checklist that you can start applying immediately. Step 1. Continue learning about personal finance. Education is your absolute best shield. And hey, just by watching this explainer, you're already doing it. Step 2. Invest for the long term instead of relying only on cash savings. You got to put your money to work so it can fight back against those rising prices. And step 3. Increase your skills so your income grows faster over time. If you make yourself more valuable in the marketplace, your paycheck can actually outpace the rising cost of living. Remember, inflation is a totally normal part of the modern economy. The goal isn't to be terrified of it. The goal is just to understand it.
So I want to leave you with this final kind of provocative thought. Now that you understand how this silent thief operates, will you keep looking at your money as just a static number on a screen, or will you start thinking entirely in terms of purchasing power? Because honestly, that one simple shift in your mindset, it changes the whole game. It completely transforms the way you save, the way you invest, and the way you build lasting wealth. Thank you so much for joining me to decode this crucial topic. And I really encourage you to take these insights and apply them to your own financial journey,